Elmwood was the kind of place where life moved slow and steady, and everyone knew each other's middle names. Nestled between sleepy hills and cornfields, it had one high school, one grocery store, and one diner that always smelled like freshly brewed coffee and fried eggs. It was in this unassuming town that Jacob Miles and Lena Carter grew up. Jacob was the quiet, scrappy kid with worn-out sneakers and second-hand clothes. Raised by a single mom who juggled 2 jobs to keep the lights on, Jacob had to grow up fast. But what he lacked in material wealth, he made up for in brains. Teachers described him as a genius in disguise. A math whiz with a curious mind and dreams far bigger than Elmwood. Lena, on the other hand, was sunshine wrapped in kindness. With chestnut brown hair always tied in a ponytail, freckled cheeks, and a smile that could light up a room, she had a way of making everyone feel seen. Unlike Jacob, she came from a stable family. Her father was a mechanic, her mother a nurse. They weren't rich, but their house was filled with love, laughter, and the smell of warm apple pie. Jacob and Lena became unlikely best friends in the 7th grade when she found him sitting alone during lunch and simply asked, "Want to split my sandwich?" From that day on, they were inseparable. They studied together, talked about their dreams under the stars, and made a pact on graduation night. No matter where life takes us, we'll find each other again. Life, as it tends to do, had other plans. Jacob got a full scholarship to MIT. He left Elmwood with a single duffel bag, $60 in his pocket, and a fire in his soul. Over the next 15 years, he built a tech empire from the ground up. What started as a simple data security startup in his college dorm room eventually exploded into a multi-billion-dollar company. Now in his early 30s, Jacob Miles was a name whispered in Forbes circles and tech summits. Despite the fame, he lived modestly. No flashy cars, no press interviews, just work and solitude in his glassy penthouse in New York City. Lena stayed behind. Her mother had fallen ill during her senior year of high school, so college was put on hold indefinitely. After her mother passed, Lena worked odd jobs to help her father with bills. She eventually became a waitress at the very diner where they used to hang out after school, the Blueberry Grill. She didn't mind it much. She liked the rhythm of the place, the smell of pancakes, the old couples who came every Sunday. But deep down she carried a quiet ache, an echo of dreams deferred. One rainy Thursday afternoon, Jacob Miles found himself back in Elmwood. He hadn't planned on it. His private jet had to make an emergency landing in a nearby town, and with time to kill, he decided to rent a car and take a drive through the old streets that built him. Nostalgia hit hard. The cracked sidewalks, the rusting high school sign. And then, as if guided by fate, he pulled into the Blueberry Grill. He walked in, his presence almost ghost-like, unnoticed at first. The bell above the door jingled, and he stepped into the warm hum of clinking cutlery and murmured conversations. Then he saw her, Lena. Hair tied up, apron on, balancing 2 plates and smiling that same radiant smile he remembered. Time seemed to freeze. She hadn't seen him yet. He sat at a corner booth and waited. "Hi there. Welcome to the Blueberry." She stopped mid-sentence, her eyes locking onto his. She blinked. "Jacob." He stood slowly, his voice quiet. "Hey, Lena." Tears welled up in her eyes before she could stop them. "Jacob Miles? From Elmwood High? MIT Jacob? Tech billionaire Jacob?" She joked, wiping her eyes. He chuckled, awkward but sincere. "Guilty." They talked for hours after her shift ended. She told him about her life, her mom, the diner. He told her about New York, the company, the loneliness of success. When the clock struck midnight, he walked her to her car. "You know," she said, looking up at him, "I always knew you'd make it." "I didn't," he admitted. "But I never forgot about you." The next morning, Jacob returned to the diner, not as a customer but with a proposal. "I've been thinking," he said, handing her a worn envelope. Inside was a letter offering her a full scholarship to any college of her choice, funded by a new foundation he was starting in her name, the Lena Carter Fund, dedicated to supporting hard-working individuals who gave up their dreams to care for others. And there's more, he added. I need someone like you in my life, someone who remembers where I came from. Come work with me. You don't have to say yes now, but I'd be lucky to have you on my team. Lena was speechless. Tears streamed down her face, but this time they were joyful. 6 months later, Lena Carter walked into the New York headquarters of Miles Tech, dressed in smart business attire, a folder clutched in her hand. She wasn't a waitress anymore. She was director of community engagement, managing initiatives that helped underprivileged communities like the one she came from. She had started taking night classes again too, psychology and nonprofit leadership. Her days were full, but for the first time in a long time, her soul felt light. As for Jacob, he was no longer alone at the top. Every morning he grabbed 2 coffees, one black, one caramel swirl with a dash of cinnamon. The second one always made her smile. In a world where money often clouds the soul, Jacob Miles remembered that kindness never goes out of style, and sometimes, a simple sandwich shared in 7th grade can change the course of 2 lives forever. Lena's transition into her new life wasn't smooth at first. The New York skyline felt foreign, intimidating. She missed the smell of the diner's coffee, the familiar creak of the floors, her dad's humming while fixing an old car in the garage. At Miles Tech, everyone seemed like they belonged in a magazine: perfect clothes, perfect posture, perfect resumes. Lena often felt like she was playing catch-up, especially during executive meetings where words like pivot strategy and equity index were thrown around like baseballs. But Jacob was patient. Every evening he'd check in. "You doing okay?" he'd ask, knocking gently on her office door, holding her favorite cinnamon tea. "I'm trying," she'd reply honestly. Then came the day she almost quit. She had fumbled during a board presentation. One of the senior VPs, a smug man in a tailored navy suit, questioned her credentials. "What makes a waitress qualified to oversee a multi-million-dollar foundation?" The room fell silent. Her cheeks burned. Words caught in her throat. Then Jacob stood up. "She's qualified," he said firmly, eyes locked on the man. "Because while we were all chasing titles, she was learning what it means to care. She's lived the struggle we claim to fight. And if you can't respect that, maybe you're in the wrong room." No one questioned her again. Months passed. Lena grew confident in her role, initiating dozens of outreach programs, STEM scholarships for girls in rural towns, microloans for single mothers, after-school programs for underfunded schools. She became a voice for the voiceless. One fall afternoon, Jacob suggested a visit back to Elmwood. They returned not in a limo but in his old high school rust bucket car, which he'd secretly restored. As they drove past familiar sights, the old library, the football field, the swing set where they once talked about stars, Lena smiled softly. "You know what I've realized?" she said, gazing out the window. "Sometimes life delays our dreams, but it never forgets them." They stopped at the Blueberry Grill, now under new management. It had been renovated but still smelled like home. The new owner was a single mom who had read about Lena's foundation and wanted to start a small reading corner for kids. Lena agreed on the spot to fund it. Over time, the bond between Jacob and Lena deepened. They shared quiet dinners, long walks in Central Park, and laughter over old memories. One snowy night, while walking home after a charity gala, Jacob stopped. "You remember that night under the stars? Our graduation?" he asked. "How could I forget? We made a promise to find each other again, but I think what we didn't know then was that we were meant to." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Lena Carter, I may be a billionaire, but without you I'm just a lonely kid with a calculator. Will you stay by my side? As my best friend, my partner, my future?" Tears filled her eyes again, different from the ones in the diner. She didn't hesitate. Yes. Their wedding was small, held under the stars on a hill outside Elmwood. The guest list included tech moguls, former diner regulars, her father, his mother, and a dozen kids from the scholarship program. Lena continued to lead the foundation with passion. Jacob slowly stepped back from the day-to-day operations of Miles Tech to focus on philanthropy. Their story became one of legend, the billionaire and the waitress. But to them, it was simply the story of two people who believed in each other when no one else did. Because sometimes, all it takes is a shared sandwich and a promise under the stars to change the course of two lives forever. From a dusty diner to the dazzling lights of the city, from childhood dreams to a future built on love, loyalty, and second chances, Jacob and Lena's story reminds us that no matter how far we go in life, the people who truly matter never leave our hearts. Because sometimes, the richest people aren't the ones with the most money, they're the ones with the biggest hearts. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. Drop a comment below. Speech balloon: would you recognize someone from your past if they walked into your life today? Until next time, keep believing in kindness, in love, and in the unexpected.